There is a particular category of exhaustion that does not stem from physical labor or the weight of responsibilities. It is the specific fatigue of repetition, the erosion that occurs when an individual attempts to bridge a distance that was never meant to be crossed. The collective impulse is to believe that if a truth is stated with enough precision, it will eventually take root in the mind of the listener. This is a fallacy. When you find yourself explaining the same boundary, the same logic, or the same objective reality for the third or fourth time, you are no longer engaging in communication. You are witnessing a structural mismatch of mental dispositions. This weariness is not anger. Anger requires an investment of heat, a belief that the situation can be altered through force. This fatigue is cold. It is a cognitive drain that signals the end of a resource. To continue speaking past this point is to commit a slow act of psychological self-mutilation. Many believe that a debate is a search for truth. In the immediate landscape of human interaction, a debate is almost always an ego negotiation. It is a struggle for psychological territory. When someone refuses to acknowledge a point that is self-evident, they are not failing to understand. They are refusing to submit. In their architecture of thought, conceding a point feels like a loss of rank. If you remain in that space fighting for the win, you have already lost. You have allowed your energy to be dictated by the defensive needs of another person's ego. You have entered a transaction where the terms are rigged to consume your resources without any possibility of return. Observe the patterns that govern the internal landscape. Those who recognize the invisible mechanics of the mind find their way here. If this resonance feels like a recognition, you belong among the observers. Join us. Subscribe. The compulsion to correct is perhaps the most dangerous trap for the discerning mind. There is an intoxicating identity found in being the one who sees. It creates a false sense of duty, the idea that because you perceive a void in someone else's logic, you are obligated to fill it. This is not intelligence. It is a lack of executive control. Intelligence without the discipline of restraint is merely a loud instrument. When intelligence becomes a compulsion, it transforms into a leash. You are pulled into every conflict, every misunderstanding, and every shallow provocation, simply because your ego cannot endure the existence of an uncorrected error in your vicinity. The cost of this leakage is profound. Every unnecessary argument is a withdrawal from your internal capital. You are trading your peace for the hope of a reflection in an eye that is committed to remaining closed. To walk away is not to lose the argument. It is to realize that the argument itself was the cage. Hierarchy is not always about social status. There is a psychological hierarchy defined by the distance one can maintain from their own impulses. The one who can permit another to be wrong and remain undisturbed by that error occupies a position of unassailable power. There is a subtle, corrosive pride in being the person who understands. This identity, the one who sees, is not a gift, it is a weight. When you cultivate a high degree of discernment, you inadvertently create a psychological contract with yourself. You begin to believe that your perception grants you authority over the ignorance of others. This is where the ego hides. It masquerades as a teacher, a guide, or a seeker of truth, when in reality it is merely seeking validation for its own lucidity. To see a flaw in another's reasoning and feel the visceral need to expose it is to be enslaved by that flaw. You are no longer acting out of autonomy, you are reacting to a provocation. The moment you feel the urge to save a conversation or fix a perspective, you have surrendered your position of power. You have allowed the lower resolution of another person's mind to dictate the frequency of your own. True authority does not require the correction of every error it encounters. It recognizes that most errors are not intellectual, but structural. They are the inevitable result of a mind that is not yet ready to perceive more. Intelligence is often mistaken for the ability to process complex information. However, The highest form of intelligence is the ability to choose which information is worth processing. Without the discipline of omission, your mind becomes a public square, noisy, disorganized, and vulnerable to every passerby. When the drive to respond becomes a compulsion, your intelligence has become your leash. You find yourself trapped in the exhaustion of pointless explanations because you lack the internal fortitude to let someone remain incorrect. This is a failure of executive control. It is a sign that your intellect is serving your impulses rather than your will. Consider the hierarchy of the mind. At the base, there is the immediate reaction, the heat of the argument. Above it, there is the cold analysis. But at the summit, there is the silence of the observer. This silence is not passive. It is a calculated refusal to engage with a stimulus that offers no return on investment. Every confrontation that does not lead to a resolution is a leakage of psychological capital. You are spending your finite energy on a transaction that yields nothing but frustration. This is not merely a waste of time, it is a reduction of your internal power. The energy you spend trying to convince the unconvincible is energy that could have been used to deepen your own understanding or fortify your own discipline. By engaging in these futile cycles, you are essentially subsidizing the stagnation of others at the expense of your own evolution. Autocontrol is the currency of the sovereign individual. When you walk away without the need for the last word, you are not conceding defeat. You are performing a strategic withdrawal. You are choosing to keep your capital intact. You are acknowledging that your peace is worth more than the temporary satisfaction of being proven right in a room that does not value the truth. Discipline is the distance you create between the impulse to react and the decision to remain still. In that distance, power is born. One of the most difficult truths to accept is the reality of unequal depth. We are conditioned to believe that everyone possesses the same latent curiosity, the same capacity for reflection, and the same drive for objective truth. Observation reveals otherwise. There are individuals for whom the surface is sufficient. Their cognitive framework is built for utility, not for depth. When you attempt to engage such a mind in a profound analysis, you are not met with resistance, you are met with a void. You are speaking a language that has no syntax in their internal world. This is not an insult, nor is it a romanticization of your own complexity. It is a cold, biological fact. To expect depth from a shallow vessel is an error of the observer, not a failure of the vessel. Recognizing this boundary is the first step toward preserving your own energy. If you continue to pour your insights into a space that cannot contain them, the waste is entirely yours. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer posited that the intellect is merely a tool, a servant to a much more primal force, the will. Most people do not form their convictions through logic. They form them through a pre-rational impulse, a desire to be safe, to be right, or to remain undisturbed. Logic is a secondary layer. It is the skin, not the skeleton. When you present an unshakable argument to someone whose will is committed to a different conclusion, your logic will simply slide off them. They will find a way to ignore, distort, or dismiss the facts because their survival depends on their current delusion. You cannot reason someone out of a position they did not reason themselves into. To attempt to do so is a form of intellectual vanity. You are operating under the illusion that your truth has the power to override their fundamental nature. It does not. The will is sovereign. Until the will itself changes through its own internal friction, no amount of external evidence will alter the trajectory of their mind. There is a specific type of arrogance hidden within the impulse to rescue others with your arguments. You believe that by showing them the light of your logic, you are doing them a favor. You are acting as the uninvited architect of their awakening. This behavior reveals an implicit sense of superiority. You have decided that their current state of awareness is insufficient and that you are the one qualified to fix it. This is a projection of your own need for order. You cannot endure the chaos of their ignorance, so you attempt to colonize their mind with your perspective. True respect for another individual involves allowing them the autonomy to be wrong. It involves acknowledging their right to remain in their own darkness. When you try to save someone who has not asked for your intervention, you are not being compassionate, you are being invasive. You are attempting to alleviate your own discomfort at the sight of their errors. There is a precise moment in every unproductive interaction where the signal for futility becomes undeniable. It is the moment when the loop begins, when the same objections are raised, the same deflections are used, and the goalposts are moved for the third time. Identifying this moment is a survival skill. It is the point where continuing the engagement becomes a strategic loss. In that instant, you must transition from a participant to an observer. You look at the dynamic from the outside and realize that the transaction has reached its limit. Walking away at this juncture is not a surrender. It is an act of high-level discernment. It is the recognition that the most powerful thing you can do is to stop being a resource for someone who is committed to wasting you. There is a common misunderstanding that withdrawing from an interaction is an act of hostility. We are taught that silence is a weapon used to punish. This is a projection of those who cannot conceive of a world where they are not the center of attention. In the framework of the observer, distance is not contempt, it is preservation. When you choose to step back, you're not making a statement about the other person's worth. You're making a calculation about your own. You are recognizing that the environment no longer serves the architecture of your development. To feel contempt requires you to remain emotionally tethered to the object of your scorn. It requires energy. True distance, however, is neutral. It is the quiet realization that there is no longer a productive exchange to be had. You do not leave because you hate. You leave because you have seen enough to know that staying is a form of self-betrayal. Maturity is often defined by the ability to endure the existence of an error without the impulse to correct it. Most people are haunted by the wrongness of others. They feel a physical discomfort when they witness a fallacy or a delusion, as if the other person's ignorance is a personal affront to their own intelligence. This is a lack of autonomy. If your peace depends on the accuracy of someone else's worldview, you are their prisoner. You are perpetually at the mercy of their limitations. The discipline of walking away involves granting others the absolute right to be wrong. It is the recognition that their journey, their blindness, and their eventual collisions with reality are not your responsibility. When you stop trying to manage the perceptions of others, you reclaim a massive amount of cognitive space. You are no longer an unpaid consultant for minds that never asked for your guidance. One of the most profound leaks of power occurs in the moment of justification. When you decide to leave a conversation or a relationship, the reflexive impulse is to explain why. You want to state your reasons, to delineate your boundaries, and to ensure they understand the logic of your exit. This is a mistake. Every explanation is an invitation to further negotiation. By justifying your departure, you are implicitly asking for permission to leave. You are giving the other person a chance to argue with your reasons, to move the goalposts, and to pull you back into the cycle. A sovereign individual does not owe a narrative to those who have proven they cannot hear it. The explanation is for you, not for them. When you walk away in silence or with a simple, non-negotiable conclusion, you retain the totality of your power. You leave the other person with the only thing they are capable of processing, the vacancy of your presence. If you view your life as a series of strategic investments, energy becomes your most valuable currency. Every interaction is a transaction. You are trading a portion of your finite time and your mental focus for a specific return. Most people are bankrupt because they spend their capital on low-value conflicts. They argue with strangers, they defend themselves against shallow accusations, and they seek validation from those they do not even respect. This is not just a waste of time, it is an erosion of your internal framework. The observer treats energy as psychological capital. You do not spend it on friction that yields no growth. You do not invest it in minds that are committed to remaining static. By walking away, you are performing a necessary act of financial discipline for the soul. You are ensuring that your resources are available for the work that actually matters, the cultivation of your own discipline and the sharpening of your own vision. Power is not found in the victory over others. It is found in the total command of your own attention. To cultivate the eye of the observer is to accept a specific form of displacement. When you stop engaging in the collective rituals of validation and conflict, you begin to occupy a different frequency. This is the loneliness of discernment. It is not a melancholy state, but a functional one. Most human connection is built on shared illusions or mutual reactions to external stimuli. When you remove your participation from these cycles, the bridge between you and the majority of social interactions begins to dissolve. You are no longer one of them, because you no longer share their compulsions. This displacement is the price of sovereignty. You cannot have unclouded vision and a high degree of social integration at the same time. The crowd requires your conformity. The truth requires your distance. Accepting this loneliness without dramatization is the mark of a mind that has reached a state of internal stability. You're not missing out on the world. You are simply no longer a victim of its noise. There is a profound danger in the practice of walking away, the temptation to transform distance into superiority. When you observe the repetitive errors and the ego-driven cycles of others, it is easy to cultivate a sense of cold arrogance. You begin to look at the world as a gallery of fools. This is a failure of the observer. Contempt is just another way of being tethered to the object of your judgment. It is a subtle form of emotional leakage. If you feel superior to those you are leaving behind, you are still seeking validation through comparison. You are using their ignorance to bolster your own ego. True power is indifferent. It does not need to look down on others to feel its own height. The moment your distance becomes a source of pride, you have lost your lucidity. You have replaced one mask with another. The goal of the observer is to see clearly, not to judge loudly. The world celebrates the fighter, the one who stands their ground, who argues their point, and who refuses to back down. This is a celebration of impulse, not strength. It is easy to react. It is easy to be triggered into a defense of your own identity. The true test of power is the ability to remain still when every biological impulse is screaming at you to respond. It takes more strength to walk away from a provocation than it does to engage with it. Engaging is a surrender to the stimulus. Walking away is the ultimate assertion of the will. This discipline is not a one-time event. It is a continuous refinement. It is the repeated decision to value your internal state over the external outcome. When you choose discipline over impulse, you are proving to yourself that you are no longer a puppet of your environment. You are the architect of your own silence. There is a weight to knowing what others do not yet perceive. When you see a disaster approaching in a conversation or a project, and you realize that the participants are committed to their own blindness, the weight can feel unbearable. The discipline here is to allow the disaster to happen. You must resist the urge to intervene where intervention is not valued. You must learn to witness the collision without feeling responsible for the wreckage. This is the highest form of detachment. It is the recognition that every individual is entitled to the consequences of their own choices. Your role is not to prevent the crash, but to ensure that you are not standing in the impact zone when it occurs. The ultimate illusion of the ego is the belief that power requires an audience. We are conditioned to think that if we do not defend our position, we have surrendered it. We equate validation with victory. But in the architecture of the self, power is an internal state, not a social outcome. Proving yourself to another is an admission of their authority over you. It is a confession that their opinion of your reality is more important than your reality itself. When you feel the desperate need to be understood, you are essentially asking for a permit to exist as you are. True power is found in the absence of this need. It is the ability to hold a truth, to see a path, or to maintain a boundary without the requirement of external consensus. The observer does not seek to be right in the eyes of the crowd. The observer seeks to be aligned with the cold accuracy of the scene. Walking away is not an act of defeat, it is a strategic act of self-preservation. It is the moment when you decide that your internal capital is too valuable to be spent on a transaction that offers no return. The world will interpret your silence as weakness. They will see your withdrawal as a failure to meet their challenge. Let them. Their interpretation is based on their own limitations, their own need for friction, and their own inability to exist without conflict. You are not leaving the battlefield because you are afraid of the fight. You are leaving because you have realized that the battlefield itself is a distraction. The real work happens in the distance. The real strength is cultivated in the refusal to be moved by the provocations of the unseeing. The discipline of walking away is the ultimate assertion of sovereignty. It is the declaration that you are no longer a resource to be consumed by the chaos of others. You have reclaimed your attention, your energy, and your silence. There is no debate to be won. There is no one to save. There is only the continuous work of maintaining the distance required for vision. The door is closed. The interaction is over. You are now exactly where you belong, in the unshakable center of your own observation. Subscribe.